Welcome to today's webinar titled Building Effective Program Assessments, Adapting and Using Tools from the Assessing Women and Men in Engineering AWE project. My name is Greg Nagy, and I am the Virtual Learning Community Manager from The Ohio State University, who provides technical support for the STEM Equity Pipeline project. Before we start the presentation, I'd like to go over some housekeeping items for this webinar. This webinar is scheduled to last roughly 1 hour and is being recorded in order to view this presentation in its entirety later. The recorded webinar will be available by the end of this week on the www.stemequitypipeline.org website. As you've already found out, you'll be watching the presenters present slides through the WebEx interface while listening to them talk over the phone. If you cannot get the WebEx software to work today, you can download today's slides from the What's New section of the www.stemequitypipeline.org website and follow along using your phone. All the attendees' phones have been automatically muted. The presenters will answer questions after the presentation. However, we can take questions at any time. There are two ways we will take questions. For the first way, at any time during the presentation and during the Q&A, you may submit a question by typing it in the Q&A panel at the bottom right of the WebEx screen. I will read those questions to the presenters at the end of their presentation. The second way we will take questions is by speaking over your phone. If you wish to ask a question, please click the raise hand icon at the bottom of the participants panel. I will unmute your phone and ask you by name to ask your question. When you are finished, I will then mute your phone again. I would like to start this webinar by introducing Mimi Lepkin, CEO, National Alliance for Partnerships in Equity Education Foundation, and STEM Equity Pipeline Project Director. Mimi?
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon for those of you on the east side of the country and probably still morning in the west. Appreciate your participation in this third webinar of our series here at the STEM Equity Pipeline Project, and I'm glad you were able to join us today. I'm particularly pleased to have Tricia Berry with us, and I will introduce her in a couple of minutes, but I want to take just a few minutes here at the beginning of the webinar to describe a little bit about the STEM Equity Pipeline project to you so that you understand the background and can learn more about how to get involved with us. First of all, the project was funded by the National Science Foundation with a grant from the Human Resources Directorate, their Gender in Science and Engineering program. This is an extension services grant that was awarded to the National Alliance for Partnerships in Equity Education Foundation. An extension services grant means basically that we are receiving funds in order to provide technical assistance and consulting services, in our case to states, to increase their capacity to provide professional development to teachers. There are basically three goals that we have in this project. The first one is to build the capacity of the formal education community, and when we say capacity here, we're talking about professional development capacity around gender equity in STEM. And we're working primarily in the formal education system, so that means middle school, high school, and community colleges are our target community, primarily with career and technical education programs and teachers of related academic coursework that support those programs. The second goal is to institutionalize the implemented strategies by connecting the outcomes to existing accountability systems. And one of the things that we're really interested in doing is looking at how the work that we do could potentially impact local educational agencies and community colleges' ability to meet the non-traditional core indicator of the Perkins Act, increasing the participation and completion of underrepresented gender students in non-traditional CTE, and in this case, we're primarily focusing on STEM-related career and technical education programs and increasing the participation of women and girls in these programs. And the third is the more broader goal of trying to increase the commitment to gender equity in STEM education overall. We'll be doing this through a variety of methods. One is by conducting professional development, and this is one of those opportunities by doing a series of webinars. We'll be also working on doing teacher training activities in the states in which we're providing our focused assistance. We're also doing consulting and technical assistance with state teams in each of those states that we're working in. And we also have a virtual web-based professional learning community. Greg mentioned the web address. Again, it's www.stemequitypipeline.org. And at the end of the project, it's a 5-year grant. We'll be compiling a best practices handbook and, of course, doing that on the website as we move forward with the project's activities. So how can you get involved? One way that you can get involved is if you're from California, Oklahoma, Missouri, Wisconsin, or Illinois. All of these states are involved currently in the project. If you go to the STEMequitypipeline.org website, you can identify who the state contacts are for each of those states, as well as who the technical assistant is from our staff that's working with them, and you feel free to communicate directly with them about your interests. The other is that we're right now in the process of seeking 2 additional states to participate in this next year. The application information is all on the website as well. And so if you're involved with a group of folks in your state who are doing STEM initiatives and this is something you might be interested in participating in, you can learn more about how to apply to be one of the next 2 states to get involved this next year. And we will be adding states each year, so this will not be a one-time only opportunity. And lastly is, of course, to participate in the virtual learning community by going to the website. Registering on the site will automatically put you on our listserv. I promise not to send you a bazillion emails. We do a once-a-month pipeline press and very occasional announcements about a webinar that we're offering or a professional development opportunity that might be available in your state. So that would be another way that you can get involved. But let's not waste any more time on all of that. Let's move right into what we're here to do, and that is to have, I think, a very educational opportunity here with Tricia Berry. Tricia is the Director of Women in Engineering Programs at the Cockrell School of Engineering at the University of Texas at Austin. And in this role, Tricia is responsible for leading the efforts on recruitment and retention of women in the College of Engineering. She came to the college in July of 1999 after 6 years at the Dow Chemical Company in Freeport, Texas, where she worked as a process engineer and a product development engineer. So she has both the industry side of her experiences as well as the education side, and is going to be talking with us today about how to build effective program assessments, particularly focused on adapting and using tools from the Assessing Women and Men in Engineering project. For those of you who participated in the webinar that she did last month, which was an overview of evaluation and assessments in general and a brief little summary about the AWE project, I know that you will find this a really good follow-up in terms of the specifics of how to use the tools. So Tricia, take it away.
Thanks, Mimi. Well, today, as Mimi mentioned, we're really going to dive into these assessment tools that are part of the Assessing Women and Men in Engineering project, or the AWE project, as it's more commonly known. And we're going to also walk through the website. And we're going to do that through PowerPoint. So it's not actually walking through the website, but I think it'll give you an idea through some screenshots and some information how to navigate the website and how to get to the tools on there that will be most useful for you. And so I hope really at the end of this presentation you'll have a better understanding of the tools that are available through the AWE project, how to modify them, and how to apply them with your own programs. So before we get started, I wanted to just gauge a little bit about how familiar you are with the Assessing Women and Men in Engineering project. So we have a little poll for you. And to the right of your screen here in a couple seconds, you will see some selections. There you go. So very familiar. Have you used the tools? You've maybe modified them along the way. You've been in there and really have a good sense of what AWE is all about. Somewhat familiar means perhaps that you visited the website. Maybe you've looked at the tools or tried one out. You know a little bit. Heard of AWE? Hopefully if you're on this teleconference, this webinar, you've heard of AWE at least, but you haven't really explored the website or tools. And if you're not really familiar with AWE at all, you're going to learn a lot today and hopefully be able to take full advantage of the tools. So go ahead and make your selection there on the right, and you'll need to hit the Submit button. And I think it's showing that the poll has ended, so the results should be popping up for us here shortly to see how familiar you all are. Okay, good. So we have a lot of people who are going to learn a lot today. That's fantastic. We're going to go through it quite a bit in detail, and really it's a fairly easy website, and the tools are very well explained. So I think even if we don't cover it all in this webinar, you'll easily be able to dive in and make use of it. So what are we going to do today? I'm going to give you a little bit of background on AWE, talk you through what's on the website, and then go into some more detail about what products are on there. We're actually going to dive into one of the products in detail, and I'm going to provide some real-world examples, show you how we've actually modified some of these and used them in our programs here at the University of Texas at Austin. And then I'm going to leave you with some words of wisdom that will hopefully help you on your adventure into the AWE projects and into assessment. So what is AWE? Well, it originated with the National Science Foundation grant to develop exportable assessment tools and methods. You can see the originating partner institutions that are listed here, as well as the co-PIs on the original grant, Barbara Boak and Rose Mara. And in AWE's most recent history, they've partnered with the Society of Women Engineers, SWE, to continue the development of the AWE tool. And in particular, they're working on the pre-college survey instruments, and those are some of the instruments and tools that I'm going to show you a little bit later. So the AWE goals are really threefold. They center around the creation of tools to assess pre-college and undergraduate retention activities, and really around helping women in engineering and science programs and others doing pre-college activities, retention activities related to girls in STEM or students in STEM to build their own capacity, to be able to expand what they're doing and do it better. AWE was really developed to address real-world challenges that most of us have in administering programs for pre-college students and current students. Most of us lack the time, we lack the money to really develop and conduct good assessments. We might grab this survey that we used last time and modify it a little bit or just change the date at the top and have the kids fill it out, and then we stack it somewhere in our office and maybe get back to it at some point to look at what those results are. Maybe put it into a spreadsheet somewhere and remember to go look at that when we're planning for the next year. So AWE is really aimed at helping us have validated, tested tools that tie to objectives that many of us will have with our programs and allow us to really take the time to do the program development using these tools. And AWE is really great at being able to provide us with ready-made things that we can just grab and go with a little bit of modification. And you'll see that as we really look a little bit at the tools here shortly. So the AWE website can be found at aweonline.org, AWEonline.org. And I wanted to just highlight there is a new website coming. It's in development, and I think they hope to have had it out already. But it's not here yet, as typical web development goes. The key thing I just did want to share, when you go to the website, if by chance you do see that it looks differently next time you head in there, the deliverables are still going to be the same. The things that I'm showing you, the tools and the instruments and the resources, are still going to be there. It'll just have some enhancements that have been coming along with the partnership with the Society of Women Engineers. So don't freak out if you go in there later and it's different. So this is what it looks like right now. You'll see on here that there's a link to log in if you're already registered, and if not, you click right there, and it's a very simple registration. The reason, of course, they're asking for people to register to be able to use this is that so they may report and assess how many people are using the tool and report it back to the National Science Foundation. I want to show you up here the navigation bars right across the top. We're going to dive into some of those links a little bit further, and you'll see a number of opportunities on the sidebar as well. The first place I wanted to show you is just the research results, which is this link right here. I'm going to show you the AWE products link in a lot of detail, but I did want to highlight briefly the research results tab. In this area, you can find links to papers that are detailing the research that's come out of the AWE project. So you can find the research methodology, and you can learn a lot more about how the survey instruments were developed, how they're being used, and what they have found with some of the data that's already been collected using these surveys at those preliminary institutions that were using it. So the AW product, this is where we're going to live and breathe for the next 30 or so minutes. The AW product tab really takes you into the heart of the AW website. And this is where you will find all the information about the survey instruments, the data collection templates, the implementation guides. Every bit about the actual surveys is in that AW products link. I'm going to walk you through this area of the website in a lot more detail. I'm going to start with this section right here, which is a table of contents, so to speak, for what's in this AW products area. So in that area that I just circled, there's these 10 items, and I'm going to go into more detail into items 1, the table of instruments, 2, implementing the AW surveys, 3, adapting AW surveys, and number 6, the survey job aids. I encourage you to explore the rest of the resources that are on the site, especially if you're new to developing or implementing surveys and doing assessments and evaluation on your programs. The literature overviews and the annotated bibliography provide some great summaries on some of the concepts that were used and incorporated into the development of the surveys. The ADAPT data management tool, which is number 7 here on the slide, is an access database that is meant to be the collection point for everything related to your programs, from student data to participation information to the actual survey results. That product is actually still in development. It's in beta test right now. Our workshops, there's a listing of what's to come, and there's a Train the Trainer workshop coming up at the Society of Women Engineers Conference in November. That's the next one on the slate. The Assessment and Evaluation Primer gives us a little bit of information about some definitions. It kind of puts you in the right frame of mind of what is assessment, what is evaluation, and gives you that baseline information as you move forward. And then, of course, links to relevant sites. There's a number of resources in there to further your education on assessment, as well as to point you to others doing similar work in this area. Okay, so back to this table of instruments. This is a list of the tool areas. So we've got pre-college and participation instruments. We have a longitudinal study. There are several other instruments that are related to undergraduate students, a mentor and mentee instrument. My favorite name for one is the PDQ, the Pretty Darn Quick instrument. And those are some very short, very easy to implement survey instruments for one-time activities, maybe a 1-hour workshop or something that you do in just one day. There's also a students leaving engineering and students persisting in engineering instrument to look a little bit at your climate and culture to determine are there any factors that are common to those students that are heading out of the field or those that are staying. And then there's a college choice survey, which looks at what was the decision-making process for a student on why they chose one school over another. And each of these on that table of instruments links directly to the survey, to the instrument web pages, and I'll show you that in a minute. But they do link directly in to give you a lot more information on each of those tools. So the Implementing AW Surveys link gives you several additional pieces of information to help you on actually putting those surveys into practice. A couple of things to note. This institutional review board process, when you click on that link, it takes you into a great section for those of you that are at institutions of higher education or at national laboratories. The institutional review board is explained. What does it mean? How do you get started with that process on your campus? And it also provides some great templates so you can just kind of plug and chug your information directly in and get that off to your review board, as well as resources on how that process works. The other great place in here is this one, the recruiting students to participate in surveys. And what I love about this area is that it gives you some direct tips on how do you get students to participate in taking these surveys. In particular, this is helpful if you're emailing out maybe after an event or before events to assess their current state of understanding on something. It gives you some good tips and some actual email examples about how to get them to fill that out, how to word things, how to frame it in such a way that your response rate will actually be higher. The Survey Job Aids link takes you to what I feel is one of the most useful sections on the website. My only suggestion here, though, before you even move on, is to click on this link right here, the PDF form, because otherwise you have a big, long, scrolling list of each of the instruments and all of the information that is included about them. And I'll show you on the next slide. It's much easier, I feel, to read it in this PDF form, plus it's easy to print this way. For every single instrument that is included in the AWE system, you'll find information such as that that's included here. There's audience information. So, for example, this one is the pre-college, middle school, and high school participation instruments. So middle school and high school girls are included here. We have the survey information. And this shows what the surveys are that are included in this section, when to administer them, and how to do that. There's also measures. So this goes back to tying things to your objectives for your program. This shows you what this set of surveys actually measures. And then it also gives you some ideas of how you can use the results. So let's take another poll here. So who do you survey the most often? I'm going to go into some more detail on these different instruments, and one in particular, and I would like to see who you survey the most. Do you survey only pre-college middle school students, only high school students? Do you do both of those? And you may do all of these, but perhaps pick one that you do the most. And you'll see on this set of instruments that we've got the one area that has all the pre-college information, and then the rest really do relate to the undergraduate piece. This is one of the reasons for the partnership with the Society of Women Engineers, is to continue to develop and expand the offerings in the pre-college participation instrument area. Okay, so our poll has closed, so let's see what y'all do. It takes a second for it to pop up those results. And I will tell you the area we're going to look at as we move through, it's the pre-college participation instrument. So that's good, because it looks like the majority of y'all are in the pre-college side. Once again, everything that I'm going to be showing you relates to all of the different survey instruments. They all follow a very similar format on the website of what content is included and how they're to be used. Okay, so once again, this is that table of instruments, and we're going to go into this pre-college participation instrument section. But like I said, if you're doing undergraduate predominantly, the same process and the same information is included. It's just targeted at the undergrad side versus the pre-college side. All right, so we click on that link, and this is what information will pop up. It will include a description of those survey instruments. It will include what does that measure, kind of similar to what we saw on that Survey Job Aid page earlier. It will include some sample survey items. It will also talk about how the instrument can be modified, and if it can be modified, when to best administer the instrument so that you can get the results that you're looking for. Once again, goes into that IRB approval process, shows you how to use the results, and then gives you a link to download the instrument. So those 4 items that are in bold, the description, the what does the instrument measure, can the instrument be modified, and download the instrument. I'm going to show you those in more detail on this pre-college example. So here's what the pre-college participation instrument page looks like. So I mentioned before it has those items that were listed, but you also perhaps will notice some different ones on this, like this outreach activity observation form, and there's a number of downloads here instead of perhaps just one if it's one specific survey. So each survey instrument may have a few additional links depending on what is being offered or what additional resources might be made available. It also shows you up here that there are a number of tools available within this section. There are pre-college instruments, there are pre- and immediate post and 3 to 6 month post surveys. There are modules available to kind of optimize based on what your objectives are. There's an observation form that can be used for your volunteers, and there's an implementation guide that really goes into a lot more detail on how to implement these within your program. So clicking on the description link, this takes you to a very good overview of the tools, and this is a great place to start when you're looking for what to perhaps implement in your program. So in the case of the pre-college instruments, there are some core instruments that really address these core objectives that a lot of programs typically have, and then there's some optional modules that you can plug in depending on what your additional objectives may be for your program that aren't included in those core objectives. And then you'll also see that for the pre-college surveys, there are actually 3 different versions available within this AWE site. There's one focused on engineering, there's one focused on science, and then there's one focused on computer science. So you can take which version matches best with what you are trying to accomplish. So scrolling down a little bit further in the description area, you find this tools and when to administer section. And this looks basically identical to what we saw in the survey job aids link earlier, that PDF I was showing you previously. So in the what do instruments measure area, I think this is a great place for people to really take a look at what are their objectives and do they match up with what other programs are using as objectives, or are there some things perhaps that you should be measuring that you're not, or should you be measuring them in a different way? It's kind of a good gut check, so to speak, for your programs. So, for example, if I'm aiming to influence high school course selection, then I know, because of bullet number 1 here, that this instrument can help me measure that impact. Or perhaps if I want to assess whether my program is impacting my participants' intentions to study engineering or science. Once again, these core set of instruments are going to be able to do that. And just a reminder, once again, for every single instrument, whether it's these pre-college ones or the students leaving engineering, you're going to get these sets of bullets that will explain what does this actually measure. So here's an example of the core pre-activity survey for a middle school engineering activity. I have the Word logo there to show you that this is downloaded in a Word document, which makes it super easy for you to customize and make it fit with what you are doing. You'll notice there's a number of things that are highlighted in yellow, and this is meant to point out to you when you do the download of where you should for sure customize and modify for your program. So you can enter welcome to the Women in Engineering program at UT Austin Summer Camp, or whatever your fancy name may be for your program, and you can customize as you go. This is just the cover sheet that is aimed at collecting some general participant information. The core survey also collects general demographic data such as gender and ethnicity and educational information. And once again, it comes in a Word format, so you can easily just grab this, plug this into your survey, and go without having to worry about formatting or the wording or anything. I wanted to show you as we went along and I showed you what's on the AWE website, how we have taken it and customized different portions of this for our Women in Engineering program at UT. This is an example of how we have customized this core survey information for one of our programs. In fact, this is one that starts tomorrow. It collects the exact same information, but it puts it in a format that works a little bit better for us and allows us to collect more information on a single sheet of paper. I think that's one of the things that you'll find with the AWE tools is that it's laid out in a way so that you can easily grab it and go and you can customize as you need to, but it's written kind of lengthy. It spreads out across the paper pretty far. So we've taken it, bunched things up, combined some things here and there, and made it so that we can have the survey fit on one page if possible. So here's some more examples of what's on this core pre-activity survey for engineering. This one collects information on the goals for the participant in both participating in the program as well as their goals in their education and career. And once again, it's a Word document, so you can modify this if there's something else you want to add or something that you don't really care about or need to know about, you can delete that out. And here, again, the yellow shows the highlighting of where you could customize for your program. And I would also just like to say that if there's something that you see in here that you feel you need to modify so you can better get an idea of what's going on with your program, it's set up in the Word document so you can do that. For example, this How Did You Hear About It activity, question number 19. Maybe you've done a special mailing, such as a postcard or something out to targeted participants, and you want to see how those people learned about the program, if that's what they caught as their attention. You can add another checkbox, or you could even modify this. I received something in the mail to say I received a postcard in the mail. Make it more specific to whatever your program is. So here's our customized version of it, and I think you'll see a number of things that are a little bit different. It includes kind of a combination of a number of sections within the core survey. It combines logistics, so we're asking them information about, what did you feel about the information you received about the camp, and did you understand what you needed to do, the logistics piece. But then it also asks about content, so understanding those career goals, interest in math and science, all of those pieces that we were just looking at previously. You also note that our scale is a little bit different. We use a 5-point scale. And we've done this over time. We've customized this over time. We started with exactly the exact same survey as the AWE survey, and we've morphed it over time as we found what works for us, what questions we really needed to ask, which ones we didn't really care about and didn't look at the data for, and have taken a number of years to get it to this point. So it is a process. So the optional modules are a great place to enhance your survey and to enhance the data that you're looking at for your programs. So the pre-college question modules look at some different objectives that perhaps aren't widespread across the majority of programs, but may definitely be included in what you are doing. They consist of a set of questions, or maybe one question, and what you need to do is go and look at what are the objectives for that module, and does that match with an objective that you have for your program. And once again, you can customize these to be specifically aimed at what you're doing in your programs, and there's that yellow highlighting to remind you of places that you do need to modify a bit. So here's an example. This is for a program that has hands-on activities or projects. And the impact of these types of projects or activities are not included in a course survey. So you need to go to these modules and grab that section and plug it into your survey if you really want to measure that impact. And in my program, we use a set of these on our post-survey at the very end of the project. And once again, we will modify those pieces in yellow so that it matches up with what our survey has. And then we'll also do something totally outside the box. We have this created, and it's based off of some of the AWE questions that are on the surveys, but it's customized in such a way that we can easily grab this postcard-sized survey and pass it out at the end of an activity, right then and there in the end of the session. This is particularly valuable, we have found, because by the end of the day, if it's a day-long camp and they're going to be in 4 or 5 different sessions during the day, they may not remember what they did in the morning by the time it gets to the end of the day and they're filling out the post-survey. We'll still ask the questions on the post-survey, but we'll hand out this little postcard right at the end of their 1-hour session or whatever it may be to collect the data right then and there. So don't be afraid to think outside the box, to take the AWE questions and plug them in a different format if that's what makes sense for you. So here's another example of a pre-college question module, and this one addresses the recruitment piece for undergraduate students. And I wanted to point out this piece right here, because this is another way that you can modify something. I'll show you our modification here in a second. This is where you ask students to indicate what their chance is that they're going to go to college, or that they're going to major in engineering, or whatever the question may be. There's a number of those in this set of questions. I'm just showing 2 here. And what the students would do is say, oh, well, I'm 50% sure that I'm going to go to college. Or maybe they clicked somewhere in here. Well, this box right here, that X is what made us modify how we do this. Because what is that X? We're not quite sure what percent that is. So what we have done is we have them actually fill in a number so we don't have to guess. This is our pre-survey for the same camp that we have that's starting tomorrow. And we have it online as part of the registration system. So when students register to our Kinder Camp, we ask them the pre-survey questions right then and there on the website. And you can see right here, these two questions down here ask that percent question. It just takes the guesswork out of figuring out where that X is on that bar. They actually fill in a number. We don't have to interpret. And then here's some questions pulled from our post-survey. So you can see we asked the same thing on the post-survey, and this would be a paper form that we give them at the very end of the day camp. And that's where we can see, did we actually have a difference in their percentages that they're reporting? Did we affect their choices, perhaps, or at least their thought of what they're going to do in the future? I wanted to also show you some additional tools that are there to help you, because one of the big pieces for us when we're doing assessment is we collect all this data, we have all these surveys, we have information overload, but what we need to do is be able to collect it, gather it, and put it in some format so that we can make sense of it and that we can use it to actually better our programs, reach students in a different way, have that impact on our objectives that we want to have. So the AWE tools each include some sort of data entry template. And that's simply an Excel spreadsheet that is set up to very easily allow you to collect the information and plug it in where you need to have it. So where we're at right now is this how to use tab at the bottom. And this is the tab that pulls up when you click on the link, the data entry template link. And this walks you through and gives you tips on how to use the template. And I encourage you to check that out for every single survey. It's a little bit different for each one. And this is the example, once again, for the pre-college participation instrument. So moving to the next tab, this is the pre-survey questions. And you'll notice that there's post-survey questions here also. So this is a place where all of your data is put into one spot. All the pre-survey data in the same spot as the post-survey data. And here at UT, we even take it where we add all of our registration information in here so we can track all of it within one area. You can see on here that it tells you how to answer the questions, how to enter it into the data entry tab. And I'll show you that data entry tab in a minute. It gives you the coding to enter the results from the survey straight into the spreadsheet. So once again, this is a great tool for you. You don't have to develop it if you use those AWE instruments. It's right there ready for you to just plug it in. Here's the template itself. So if you click on the pre-data entry tab, this is what you'll see. And the thing to keep in mind for this is that it's formatted based on the AWE surveys as they are currently written. So if you modify anything, you'll need to remember to go into here and modify this template as well, which simply may mean adding in a column or changing some wording here or there. So here's the customized template that we use. So you can see we've taken it and we've modified everything up here in the title line, the header line, because we wanted to make sure that if we're in there looking, we didn't have to remember what was the question, what were we asking. We actually write it all out there into that field, and then we collect the data below. And here you can see those percent chances again. We let them enter those numbers in so that we don't have to do any guessing whatsoever when we are trying to figure out how our impact was. So I wanted to move a little bit into some words of wisdom and steps to success, because this was a lot and it was fast and furious, and there's a whole bunch of information on this AWE website. There are all of the survey instruments that I've showed you. There are all of the types of resources information that I walked you through on the pre-college side. So there's just a wealth of information and resources so that you don't have to invent the wheel yourself. So my steps for success are to select one of these AWE instruments to start with. You have a program and you're wanting to assess it. Grab one of these. They're tested, they're validated, they've been used, and all of the tools are there for you to just grab and go. I would also encourage you to collect those optional modules that are based on your program objectives. Those can definitely enhance your surveys and make sure that you're really assessing the pieces of your program that you want to assess. Secondly, I would recommend minimizing your modifications in the beginning. I think you can see from what I showed you on our modifications that we've done a lot of modifications, but we were one of the original partners in AWE almost 7 years ago. So over the course of time, we've modified these and made them fit with what our program is doing and matching them to our objectives a little bit more clearly. But we all started with the generic AWE tools as they were originally written. So it does take time, and that feeds off of number 3. You also need to optimize based on your results, because what you may find is that you're asking a question, but you're getting an answer that is different than what you're either expecting or than what you're really trying to measure. So sometimes you have results, but they're answering the wrong questions. So you need to modify those as you go. And then last but not least, use it or lose it is kind of our motto in here. If it's data that we are collecting that we are never going to use, then we do not put it in our assessment. So for example, if you're collecting information on some room layout or the location of an event, but it's something that you cannot change, then don't ask it. If you're not going to do anything with it, there's really no reason to collect that data or have your participants even fill it out. And part of the reason for that is if you have them fill out something on room location, but it's something that you can't change, the people are going to expect you to change it if they're saying that the location was terrible. So don't ask it if you're not going to be able to do something with it or look at it. And then if you were on the last webinar, you might remember that these were the same words of wisdom, because really when it comes to assessment, it's the same thing for me. You've got to start small and very focused. You really do need to look at the objectives for your program. Don't try to measure everything, and think about how you're going to use those results and what results you're going to use, and focus in on those pieces first in your assessment. As I mentioned before, don't reinvent the wheel. We can use these products, and we can also use others' assessments and use them with some modifications. But there's really no need for us, especially if we're not experienced or trained in this area, to try to reinvent the wheel. And last but not least, keep at it, because it really will eventually become part of your program's culture. It's embedded in our systems here in our Women in Engineering program to use assessment to do pre- and post-surveys on everything that we do. Everything requires a registration form so that we can collect the data from the students to know if we're really having an impact. And we've been able to modify our programs. We've been able to track and see where we're headed. We've been able to see which programs and which parts of our programs really are the most successful so that we can do the best and be the best at recruiting and retaining women here at UT Austin. So once again, all of the AWE products are online at aweonline.org, and feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is on here as well as on the STEM Equity Pipeline website, or feel free to reach out to the AWE project personnel, Dana Hosco, Barbara Bogue, or Rose Mara, and any of them are also more than willing to help. And they want to know what you're doing with the AWE tools. So if you get in there and you play around with it and you make some modifications, send them a copy. They'd love to see what you're doing with that and would love any feedback that you have, especially as they're getting ready to roll out this new website. I'm sure they'll want as much feedback as possible on how to make it easy and usable for everyone. So with that, I thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to Mimi and to Greg, and I think we're close to time for questions.
Well, Tricia, that was fantastic. I can't wait to go on there and start messing around with those things. That's a very professional way to put it, isn't it? Lots of really good tools. That's fantastic. And I'm also looking forward to looking at the research briefs too. I think that will help us in many ways in the work that we're doing. Let me just, Christian asked a question. Apparently it was a little late getting on the call, and I wanted to repeat something for all of you, and that had to do with participation in this project and what the opportunities were. First of all, I mentioned earlier that we will be taking on 2 more states in the project. The application information is on our website. The applications are due July 18th. But I want to make sure everybody understands that this is a project that's focused strictly on providing expertise to state teams of people who do staff development. It's really about building the capacity of people in the states who conduct professional development around their ability to integrate gender equity and STEM into the work they're already doing with teachers and science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and STEM-related CTE program instructors as well. It's not a project where we fund local activities. It's really about bringing expertise to teachers. And Tricia's expertise is a good example of that. The webinars will always be free and available to everyone in the project, whether you're in a participating state or not, at least at this point in our work. So I hope that answers Christine's question a bit. If anyone has any questions, you can put them up in the Q&A box at the bottom right-hand side of the WebEx page. And or if you'd like, you can also, there's also the chat function too. You can put it there. And so far, Tricia, you must have just hit this on the mark. Everybody seems to have all the answers, so we're doing really well.
I see one from Susan Anderson.
Oh, I didn't see that.
And it asks if the modifications of the surveys are on the AWE website, and they are not. But I am happy to share those. So I don't know the best way to do that, Mimi, but I'm happy to share all those examples. I have no problem with that. They're all in Word documents, with the exception of the ones that are pre-surveys, because those are on our website. I may be able to grab them and make a PDF. It just might not be very pretty, but I can do that.
Okay.
So would that be just to share back to you, Mimi, and then you can distribute, or?
Actually, if you don't mind, if people can communicate with you directly, that might be the best way, so that eliminates one more step in the process for them.
That's fine.
Since your email's right here on the screen that we're looking at right now, that'd be great.
Perfect.
Okay. Greg, looks like Freda Walker has her hand raised. Is that what I'm seeing? Can you
find her?
Find her?
Yeah, just a second. I think it's this one here. Okay, you
Hello?
There she is.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Tricia, I have a question to ask, and that is, do you know if there are any programs that have used these AWE products but they have not been focused on engineering, but let's say some area in computer science or, a science field? And could they easily adapt these and do them for a different kind of career and still get valid information or valid data?
Well, that's the one good thing with the pre-college ones, because there are the 3 different kinds. There's the one for engineering, the one for science, and the one for computer science. I don't know who's used which surveys for what. But I do know that the 3 different versions have been tested and validated. So there are a number of the schools that were part of the original AWE project, as well as some of the other ones that we pulled in that had combined computer science engineering programs. A lot of places computer science was part of engineering. Or they had more of an arts and sciences type area, and so they hit the biology and the chemistries and the physics and those other disciplines as well when they were doing the testing. So the pre-college instruments are tested and validated for all of those areas. You just would want to make sure you grab the right one, because they do have slightly different wording on them depending on which field you're looking at.
Okay. Thank you.
Tricia, so
now,
there's some questions.
now I'm going to ask another question, though, is that is there on the OZ site, does it, like you gave your examples of how you had adapted these products, are there other, do they give other examples of that, of how other institutes or programs have adapted the programs where you know what I'm saying, could say, well, maybe I wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel if I was trying to adapt?
Sure. They don't have a lot of examples on there right now. I'm not sure how much of that is going to come through on the new website that they're developing, but I know that has been brought up because with the partnership with the Society of Women Engineers, their needs are a little bit different than what the tools were originally developed for, which is the Women in Engineering, Women in Science programs on a university campus. That was kind of the originating mindset behind the tools. So there are some modifications coming through with their needs, and my understanding is that they'll have some more examples based on what those different Society of Women Engineers sections may have done with the tools. But I don't think it's up there yet.
Okay. Thank you.
And I think, Barbara Bogue and Rose Mara, they've been collecting this information from people as they've been going through the years, the last 7 years. So there's a number of examples. I know I've got a number of examples as well from Penn State where Barbara is. So if any of y'all are wanting those examples from me, I can include as well some of their examples. But if you're not getting what you need from whatever I send out, then I would suggest connecting with Barbara or Rose because I know they've been collecting those also.
Yeah, Tricia, one of the things I just thought of as you were saying that is if you want to go ahead and send the examples to us, we can post those on the STEM Equity Pipeline webpage on the same page where the archived access site will be so that people could actually pick up the samples that might be useful to them.
That'd be great.
We can do that. Okay, a couple more questions here. Are there questions that specifically measure self-efficacy and how it has improved during the course of the program? You want to address that one quickly?
Yes, and actually there's a survey called the Longitudinal Assessment of Self-Efficacy, and I'm not going to get the whole name wrong, it's long. I'm trying to flip to it real fast. The Longitudinal Assessment of Engineering Self-Efficacy, and that was basically a climate-type study, a self-efficacy study that we did over a course in which it gave the students a survey every single year for 5 years. So it was very well tested. It's focused on engineering, and it's focused on undergraduate students and their experiences on campus. So that tool is available. It's the second link under the AW Products. If you click on the AW Products tab, it's the second one right underneath the pre-college pieces.
That's great. Thanks. Another question. The surveys on the website are long and a bit overwhelming. What's the best route to start with your modifications? Any tips would be appreciated.
They are long. And that's why we've modified them, because at the end of the day, or even on a pre-college, pre-participant survey, we want them to fill it out. We don't want them to be skipping things and just kind of half-heartedly filling it out for us. We want the real information. So my suggestion there is to really, once again, just look back at your objectives. And, we've really learned over the course of the time that we're not really aiming to impact their goals on what they study in school, because most of our student participants are juniors and seniors in high school who, if they're not already taking the math and the science, well, it's kind of too late for them to head into engineering and for us to be recruiting them into engineering here at UT. So we've really kind of taken, that might sound a little harsh, but we've really taken this kind of, do we use it, do we need it, do we care kind of approach. And if we don't really care, don't need it, we cross it off. And I think as you go through the questions, you'll quickly see things that you're like, I don't really care about that. Or we might be trying to do that, but I don't really care what the answers are because we're going to do it anyway. So that might kind of put you in the right frame of mind to try to customize. But they are very lengthy. And the reason why they're lengthy is because if you're doing some hardcore research on your program, then you might want to have all of the data. For us in our program here at UT, we know what we're doing. We know it works because we've been tracking the data along the way on recruitment and retention. So some of the pieces we just don't really care to measure anymore. So we just have knocked those off the survey. And I think there's some you can find right off the bat to eliminate as you look at them.
Great, those are good tips. Now here's the big question.
Okay.
From Mary Phelps. Is anyone tracking the effectiveness of events or activities on a global or at least national basis?
Oh, I wish.
That was going to be my answer too.
Actually, I mean the project, that was one of the intents. That is one of the reasons for this partnership with the Society of Women Engineers and why SWE was so interested in helping keep the AWE products fresh and the project moving forward, is because they, as a national organization, wanted to be able to collect what are their sections all across the United States and really across the globe doing in this pre-college area. And can they, as a national organization, figure out a way to start collecting that data in a common way with common, consistent questions from all of their members, and start to figure out what is working and what is good out there and what are those best practices. So that's been kind of this underlying aim of all along. I'm hopeful that with the SWE work that some of that might come forward. It's a big endeavor to try to collect all of this data from everyone that's doing everything. There was some talk at one point about trying to have everyone enter their information in the SurveyMonkey, but once you do that, it's difficult to pull out individual programs information should you want that back. So it's not being done right now. It really should be done, needs to be done, but there may be, at least on the pre-college side, some hope with what's moving forward with this SWE partnership.
All right, that's great, Tricia. Thank you so much. I think at this point, Greg, we'll pass it back to you. You can give everyone instructions about how to locate the archived version of the webinar when we're finished. And I want to thank everyone for your participation and involvement and the good questions that were asked. And we'll let Greg wrap it up.
All right, thank you for joining us today. Remember that this webinar will be available on the www.stemequitypipeline.org website under the Professional Development heading and under Archived Webinars by the end of this week. When you close your WebEx program, a few survey questions will open up in your web browser that we would like for you to answer for us. Thank you.